What is the groove? Like really, what is it? We can see it when someone's performing and we can feel it. But how do we define it? In my research of scholarship on what musicians have to say themselves, the groove is difficult to define in words, but there is a level of consistency that is attached to the groove. But the groove can last for a very long time without feeling boring. For me, the instrument that draws me to the groove would be the bass. A bass line doesn't have to be very intricate. It can be very simple, but the effect can be very great. Eartha Kitt in his interview with Pitchfork about his favorite bass line said that the bass plays the role somewhere between melodic and harmonic and rhythmic. When you think of
rhythm, you think of drums. You think about harmonic and melodic, you think of piano. But it's the in-between of that, and it creates a bit of its own rhythm, and it carries its own melody.
From this, it can be argued that the bassist can play the role of completing the sound of a song or being the actual statement of a song. Now for feeling. The feeling of feeling the groove is important because it basically shows that the song has achieved what it wanted to achieve. Does it have the people's heads bopping, the band jamming, the crowd moving, the cheeks clap? It can be described in an ethereal sense, like being that pulse that creates a place where musicians can create magic and feeling. Basically not making a song sound robotic. As Jeffrey Whittle defines it as, musicians often deliberately manipulate the specific timing of some elements to create a groove, notable in funk and jazz. Discussions of groove often center around the performance of swing rhythm by drummers, who subtly and consistently vary the timing and energy of individual notes played in the typical swing pattern, in effect creating personalized versions of the rhythm. From the research that I've done, I have concluded 3 features when defining the concept of groove. And feel free to discuss whatever songs get you moving. I need to update my Spotify playlist, but number 1, a kind of energy or a force. Number 2, a consistency. And number 3, being aware of what it aims to do. As Eartha Kitt said,
feel is one of the more important aspects of being a musician. If it don't feel right, you're getting fired. It's the truth.
For this video, I'm aiming for 15 likes. I'm aiming for 15 likes. I'm gonna stay humble. Thank you and enjoy. Now let's talk about the Disney groove. Disney animation can be placed into certain eras across its timeline. Now these days can vary by a few years depending on who's writing it, but from 1937 to 1942, this era is known as the Golden Era, with movies like Snow White, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Bambi, and Dumbo. These films established Disney Studios as one of the leaders in animation and Walt Disney overseeing the films himself. While the Golden Age movies are considered wholesome, they also had very dark undertones, like you see Snow White running through the forest and things turning into things, like the alligators. I don't like reptiles now. Inside Pinocchio, when you see that the kid turning into a donkey crying for his mother, and then you see Dumbo getting bullied by those elephants. Like Disney needs to pay for this trauma that you gave to me as a child. Like I didn't sleep sometimes because of you. Then we have the wartime era, 1943 to 1949, with movies like Soldados Amigos and The Three Caballeros. Some people don't consider this an era because of the inconsistent tones of the movies that were released during this time. They even made wartime propaganda during this time. Now, if you've watched my first ever essay on 101 Dalmatians that you can watch right here. Now that you've ignored that, 101 Dalmatians would be placed somewhere between the Silver Age and the Bronze Age of Disney animation because it came out in 1961. The Silver Age, 1950 to 1959, was Disney's return to the big budget stuff like Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, Lady and the Tramp, and Sleeping Beauty. A lot of incredible backgrounds during this era. So damn pretty. Jungle Book was the last movie that Walt Disney had worked on before his death, and people tend to believe that the Bronze Age, 1970 to 1988, was the trial and error period of Disney, which moved away from the fairy tale storylines of the Silver Age and moved to more modern settings like The Rescuers, Fox and the Hound, and Oliver and Company. Oh yeah, here comes my song. You know it. Let's go.
1 minute I'm in Central Park.
Absolute bomb. Now I'm going to talk about my favorite and probably the most memorable era of Disney animation, which is the Renaissance era from 1989 to 1999. This era to me can be seen as the amalgamation of the previous eras by sometimes moving back to the classical fairy tale storytelling, but making the musical aspects of the film just as important and memorable, like The Little Mermaid, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Tarzan, Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, Hercules, Pocahontas, Mulan, and don't you ever in your life forget about the Goofy movie. Don't you ever. I think that this era proved Disney's might not only as a household name, but as a box office powerhouse. This era just brings back memories of watching these movies over and over again. You never get tired of this stuff. It's just... I wish I could go back. Side note, Pixar were releasing bangers during this time like Toy Story, A Bug's Life, and Toy Story 2. But they don't count as being part of Disney yet because they didn't acquire them. But Pixar, I see you, baby. And I want you. Now we can do this the
easy way, or we can do it the hard.
The next era is the post-Renaissance era, which is similar to the previous eras because there is no common theme throughout 2000 and 2009, with movies like Fantasia 2000, Atlantis, Treasure Planet, Brother Bear, Home on the Range, and Bolt. And you can see throughout this period a transition into CG animation as opposed to 2D animation. The era that we're currently living in now is the revival era. So 2010 to... Wait, what year is it again? Some argue that it's the second Renaissance era because of the amount of muscles that Disney are flexing, with the traditionally animated Princess and the Frog, and then move into CGI like Wreck-It Ralph, Tangled, Big Hero 6, Frozen, which alone made nearly $270 million. And I remember people praising it for being the first ever Disney film that concentrated on siblings, but have you not watched Lilo and Stitch? Well, now, where does Emperor's New Groove fit in all of this? It would be somewhere like just at the start of the post-Renaissance era. To add on top of what I said earlier, Dr. Chris Pallant in his book Demystifying Disney said that the post-Renaissance era could also be referred to as the Neo-Disney era. This Neo-Disney period, as it will be termed here, comprised the films Fantasia 2000, The Emperor's New Groove, Atlantis the Lost Empire, Lilo and Stitch, Treasure Planet, Brother Bear, and Home on the Range, triggered by a usurpation of what had customarily been the domain of 2D hand-drawn animation by primarily computer-generated Pixar-esque productions. This Neo-Disney phase of feature animation diverged both artistically and narratologically from the style traditionally associated with the studio, while the foundations had been laid during the Renaissance period, namely by the directorial team of Ron Clements and John Musker, for Disney feature animation to establish a more parodic and progressive tone than had previously been possible. The Neo-Disney features took this to a new level. I believe that The Emperor's New Groove can be viewed as satire to the storytelling of previous Disney animations where the aim was to remove the point that you were watching a film and feel like you were watching a fantasy full of songs, magic, and fairy tales. But The Emperor's New Groove flips this whole joint and makes sure that you know that you're watching a film told by a llama. This is done through the use of narration and breaking the fourth wall, like Cusco pointing out that the movie has a theme song guy that somehow looks like Tom Jones. And what would you know? It's Tom Jones.
Oh yeah!
By using such devices, this opens up The Emperor's New Groove to have fun with its structure and comedy. By reflecting on itself, continuity can be thrown out the window and justified in order to serve the greater joke. Traditionally, films aim for temporal continuity, so this means that it should make sense in terms of shots and there should be a feeling of natural progression, but The Emperor's New Groove says, no sir, sit down.
Just take a cup of tea.
For example, when Cusco is knocked out by Crank and then he's put in charge of disposing of the body, and then provides his own diegetic theme song. All the extras can hear it. When Crank changes his mind, the film provides an extreme pull away, which at first displays the drop of the waterfall, and then goes one above that to show the audience a chimp and a bug. It is a funny and strange moment, but it's also used to drive the story forward by bringing our attention back to Crank, who is now in the market finding a way to get rid of the body. By using temporal discontinuity, we don't have to watch Crank lift the bag and make his way all the way down the stairs and go to the market. Even when our attention is pulled away from the story, the plot still continues to move forward while providing a moment for comedy, which is sustained throughout the whole film. Pallant also discusses the sequence where Yzma formulates a plan to get rid of Cusco, which ends up adding another layer of discontinuity and provide a cartoon demonstration of her plan. Here comes one of my favorite lines.
I'll smash it with a hammer!
However, the joke of this moment is that Yzma decides to come up with another plan because she wanted to save on postage.
Or to save on postage, I'll just poison him with this.
Emperor's New Groove is very self-aware of what it is and is placed in a Disney timeline. But then it also uses that in order to add to the tone of the movie and explain problems such as discontinuity with the payoff being comedy.
I win.
The Disney groove changed with this movie. The pulse felt snappier and the jokes felt more sophisticated. Emperor's New Groove was in its own element and bringing a new groove to the Disney formula.
Tasty.
In summary, The Emperor's New Groove is about a selfish young emperor who has complete power over his kingdom, but learns through the help of Patria and others about the concept of humility and empathy. But what if I told you that The Emperor's New Groove wasn't always called The Emperor's New Groove? And the original film named Kingdom of the Sun was slated to be released and was directed by Roger Allers. The original project was supposed to be directed solely by Roger Allers, acting as a directorial follow-up to the 1994 Lion King, which was directed by himself and also Rob Minkoff, who directed Stuart Little 1 and 2, The Haunted Mansion, and even The Forbidden Kingdom. Listen, that movie was so dope. It was just cool to see Jet Li and Jackie Chan in the same place, man. It's got a special place on my left nipple. The Kingdom of the Sun was originally supposed to be an epic, not a comedy, based on Incan culture and the plot which was likened to Mark Twain's 1881 story of The Prince and the Pauper, with mystical elements while also being a musical. The crew of Kingdom in the Sun even went to Peru for research on Incan culture and art in order to build an authentic animated world. Obviously, there were some differences regarding the characters themselves, like Cusco. Yes, he's basically the same as the final project, but he wasn't funny, you know, he was just a brat, like he wasn't smart funny. Ugh. He then swapped lives with a peasant boy who was voiced by Owen Wilson. Yes, the Owen Wilson. You know what I'm talking about, Owen Wilson. Everybody say it with me. Whore. Isma, instead of being a mad scientist, was instead a witch who wanted to capture the sun because she wanted eternal youth, because the sun gave her wrinkles. She then turns the real emperor into a llama and blackmails him. I don't know what that actually has to do with the actual plot of the story and capturing the sun, but who knows? And the peasant who took place of the emperor falls in love with his fiancée, who is voiced by Laura Gugino, and she thinks that the emperor has learned humility, while the real emperor falls in love with a llama herder or a sheep herder, I forgot, who was voiced by Laura Prepon. And Cusco's name was originally Manco. Now, in terms of the production team, let's start with the directors. So, Mark Dindal was brought on as a co-director because the Disney executives were not pleased with the story and progress of Kingdom in the Sun and its similarity to the Prince and the Pauper-like stories, like the one that they actually released in 1990. The executives chose Mark Dindal because of his directorial debut of Cats Don't Dance, which displayed wit and comedy. Side note. This was similar to when it needed to be story changes for The Lion King. Roger Allers was brought on to help direct because, let me tell you, the initial version of The Lion King is unrecognizable, but this I'm not going to go into it on this video because we don't have enough time for that. It's nighttime and there's a fire, and the animals can only run if Mufasa says so. There are different tribes of lions and they have their own territories. Lions from the fire have to ask permission to go through Mufasa's land. Mufasa's pride finally moved because of Mufasa's orders. The next day, Simba is playing with his friend. Nala knocks him into a dark hole where they start getting chased by a warthog that's trying to kill them. And then they interrupt the prince of the hyenas named Banagi, who's having a meeting. They get saved by the hyenas. That means that Mufasa has a debt to them. And then Mufasa gives them a kill as a payment for saving Simba, but then Simba sees a rogue lion named Scar who's double the size of Mufasa, and then they get into a fight. And then there's a character called the Lion in the Moon that offers advice. A fight against some crocodiles after dinner in a Mecca village with Timon of Vandme. Then there's an allegiance between the lion tribes, and then there's also an alliance with the hyenas and Scar. They fight Mufasa. He beats the hyenas, but his bones are crushed by the size of Scar, who falls on top of him or something and crushes him. Simba runs away. Scar takes over. He wants kids with Nala, and then she runs away. Then she finds Simba. Then talk about how they've matured. They return and challenge Scar. Simba and Scar have a bloody and violent battle. Simba suffocates him until he's dead. Simba then fights the hyenas, and then they get their big rock back, and Simba and Nala have a baby. Oh yeah, small little detail. Sarabi, so that means Simba's mother. Her sister was called Serafina, and Serafina is the mother of Nala. So that means that. Anyway, the directors have separate visions of the Kingdom of the Sun, and this resulted in test audiences reacting well to Mark Dindal's comedic scenes and being quiet during Roger Allers' scenes, respectfully. The executives wanted to release the movie by 2000 because they had merchandise deals with McDonald's and Coca-Cola, but Roger Allers needed more time to make the changes. But the execs denied it, and Allers left the project altogether. He wasn't the only person who left the project after the announcement of the overhaul and tone of the story. Andreas Deja, known for his character designs and supervision of Gaston, Jafar, and Scar, some of the greatest character designs in existence, and I think I pronounced his name wrong in my first essay. Let me just check. The Nine Old Men, as described in Andreas Deja's book. Yeah. He actually left the project to be a supervising animator of a small girl from Hawaii who's dealing with the loss of her parents and meets a little alien while she's healing. Owen Wilson, Carla Gugino, and Laura Prepon were dropped from the project, and new composer John Debney was brought on, and the score is beautiful. Sting's original songs were dropped from the project, but then he created a new song, A Perfect World, sung by someone who he said needed to be younger and have more energy to sing the song, which actually ended up being Tom Jones.
Oh yeah! He's the sovereign lord of the nation. He's a hypostatic creation.
And the song One Day As You Love Me is incredible. It's available on the soundtrack and it starts off so, but then it's honestly, it's great. You should really listen to it. I can't put it into words, but I would love to see this. I would have loved to see the sequence that song would have been in. There is so much more to the pre-development story that you can see in the Sweatbox documentary that is available somewhere online. Somewhere. Just type it in somewhere. Where Sting actually got permission from Disney to record and produce during the development of Emperor's New Groove. It's just crazy how a movie made of the scraps of something and that was being changed constantly and people didn't believe in, then turned into a timeless classic because of the amount of effort that the team put into it. It's a timeless gem. It's timeless. I think that a key dynamic that draws me to the Emperor's New Groove is the variety of characters on display throughout the whole movie, ranging from main, secondary, and very minor characters that Kuzco meets on his journey back to the palace. The minor or background characters may have very brief moments in the film, but they still have very memorable moments. Let's see, we got the theme song guy, the muses, old man, guards, village guy, minute taker, the monkey, the guys walking past trunk, the squirrel, the jaguars, the crocodiles, the waitress, the guy in the restaurant, the cook, the staff, the llamas, village guys, the teacher and the class, Yzma's guards, and the junior chipmunks. All of them have time to shine or act as part of the equation to a joke or amplify them without even saying a word. My lord, the power of animation, there's so much intention and purpose. Anyway, the main relationship that drives this movie is the one between Kuzco and Pacha. Complete opposites. Young, old, big, skinny, high voice, deep voice. Other than the physical differences, the relationship that they have can be recognized as a frenemy relationship, them being frenemies. Now, for those who don't know what frenemy is, then I'll break it down for you because you deserve it. You're here. Thank you. Here, we have friend, and then the second part is enemies, or emies. First part standing for friend, and the second part standing for enemies. Opposites of each, which shouldn't work, but this word is used for circumstances in which a relationship is more complex, and a love-hate relationship is present. This is Walter Winchell, born April 7th, 1897, and died February 20th, 1972. I don't know why I told you that, but it's in the script, and I'll tell you anyway. And according to Henninghoff from the Berlin Policy Journal, in print in 1953 with the phrase, "How's about calling the Russians our frenemies?" in the Nevada State Journal. Now this relates to Emperor's New Groove because Kuzco and Pacha are put into a circumstance that's out of their control. Kuzco ended up in the back of Pacha's car and now he needs to get back to the palace. But he also wants to build his Kuzcotopia at the top of Pacha's village without a care in the world. Booyah! But we see how much history Pacha has in that house when we're introduced to his family. His kids Chaka and Tipo, while also meeting the love of his life, Chica, who has a baby coming very soon. Like, let's just take a moment. Don't you love a healthy and supportive relationship? Look at the relationship. Just look at it, please. I need that. I need that. But Pacha chooses to lie to her in order to try and not stress his family with the truth that they may or will be losing their home. However, even when Pacha realizes that the llama is Kuzco, he still offers to help despite his earlier confrontation with him and protects him on several occasions throughout the film. And this begins to rub off on Kuzco, who saves Pacha's life. Pacha is a damn role model, man. Pacha for the win all day. Everybody say Pacha. Straight up! The characters are opposites of each other, but the circumstance that they end up in provide opportunities for growth because of their common goal that Kuzco will build his holiday home. Suite, chateau, gaff, patai, somewhere else, and their friendship ends up being a beautiful friendship. And I feel that Pacha and his family provide the kind of familial love that is absent in Kuzco's life because there is no mention of Kuzco's family throughout the whole film. But that ending shot.
He still sing.
The short-term material wealth is replaced with a long-lasting happiness, and yeah, I never disliked Kuzco because of the humor, but it's pretty evident that he didn't have good influences around him, and all he knew was how to be selfish, objectify, and doesn't care for people's feelings at such a young age. Now I want to highlight the rest of the cast, and how they are reflections of each other. They can be classified as foil characters, who range from being the main antagonist, which is Yzma, or being a supporting characters like Pacha. According to Studio Binder, who are an incredible source for film knowledge, production, everything, and techniques, they taught me a lot. According to them, a foil character is a fictional character that serves to expose something intrinsic in another character. Oftentimes, the thing exposed is a character folly, like cowardice or greed. Pacha being the loving and supportive husband exposes Kuzco's selfish and greedy traits, and Yzma is arguably a warning to what Kuzco could have been if he didn't meet Pacha. Thus, he can change his ways before it's too far gone like Yzma. Now let's talk about characters other than our protagonist. Our protagonist pairing is Kuzco and Pacha, and the antagonist pairing is Yzma and her henchman Kronk. Pacha and Kronk are both caring characters, but Pacha exposes how naive Kronk is, and the point that he is not a leader.
What am I gonna tell the village?
And is too damn nice and needs to learn when to put his foot down like Pacha, of which he eventually does.
That'll work.
And it just made me so proud. Fall characters allow for character development because of the exposure of character folly. Like your friend who has moisturized skin, and then there's you with your ankles that look like they've been dragged through the desert. Now it's okay, I know a few of you checked, I can see you. But the moral of the story is, moisturizing people, especially in this cold weather. You are the main character of your life. Own it, take care of yourself, and shine like a buff bald head. I watched season 2, guys, and it's great.
Demand a rematch.
Now, I don't think that I could do this essay without highlighting the voice acting talent of this movie. Each actor has a very distinct voice which helped bring their characters to life and increase the personality and the mannerisms of the characters. For example, the cast consisted of David Spade as the narcissistic ruler Kuzco, John Goodman as the village leader Pacha, Patrick Warburton as the best boy henchman Kronk, Wendy Malick, who has actually worked with David Spade before in the NBC sitcom Just Shoot Me, and in this she plays Pacha's wife and just the coolest character in the movie, Chica. And even the director of the film, Mark Dindal, played Cat Yzma.
Is that my voice?
That's him, that's his voice.
My voice? Oh well.
But the main actor I would love to highlight is the film's villainess, who is voiced by one of the greatest talents to ever walk this earth, Eartha Kitt. So I wanted to dedicate this part of the video to her and Yzma as a character, and how she brought a new groove or a new back to the typical Disney villainess. Now, who remembers this incredible latest scholarship about Disney heroes and villainesses from our Crowd the Veil video? Huh? Who remember? You two with your toes out? Oh, thank you. Kiss yourself. Thank you for watching it. Now I'm referring to the works of Dr. Amy Davis and her book, Good Girls and Wicked Witches. In her chapter about the Eisner era of Disney films, so chapter 6, the CEO of Disney between 1984 to 2005, Davis discusses how, by the early 2000s, evil women were becoming an increasingly rare phenomenon, and the most traditional villainesses before 2005 were Yzma and Ursula. But Ursula fits the traditional villainous checklist more accurately, like opposing the young hero, being the monstrous other, magical sea witch, jealous of a heroine's physical attribute, and having a disguise when her previous tactics against the heroine had failed. Now for Yzma, she also shares the same similarities, like the belief of being glamorous, of which she is. Yzma is the first female villain to oppose a main character who's male. She is his advisor, but is fired early in the movie for acting as if she was the emperor. She then begins to plot revenge against Kuzco so that she can finally be the ruler she believes she has the rights to. Davis said that her initial method, poisoning, is not derived from black magic, however. Instead, Yzma has a secret lab, which most of the characters seem to know about, and concocts the poison through her apparent knowledge of chemistry rather than the knowledge of witchcraft. In other words, Yzma may look like a witch, but she has no magical powers. In fact, she must rely heavily upon Kronk for help. But his ineptness, and surprisingly for an evil henchman, his generally good nature means that Yzma's efforts are doomed before they even begin. And even when she is defeated, she is not destroyed, but instead transformed through her own poison into a kitten, in which form she remains at the film's conclusion. She may be physically described as scary beyond all reason, but in fact she, along with all the other characters in the silliest and most slapstick of Disney's animated features, is very much a comic character and is not menacing to anyone, to include the other characters in this film.
You weren't expecting this.
Oh, okay.
Finish them off.
Now to bring it back, at the start of this I mentioned how the cast were a huge part of bringing these characters to life. Eartha was able to bring the glamour that she was known for to a character who was like the exact opposite of Eartha. Eartha was an incredible singer, dancer, and actress both on screen and in theatre, while also having an incredible sense of humour and voice for social justice. And on top of that, she was known as seductive and was compared to sounding like a cat, probably because of her iconic.
Ooh. Yes.
But Eartha's footprint as such a talent and someone who owned and grew her skills, like dancing for Catherine Dunham's dance troupe at the age of 16 worldwide, learning French while touring in Paris. Coincidentally, just had to make sure people knew where Paris was. It's in France, because I remember one time inside college, there was a girl who thought Scotland was in China. If you know, you know, but that was a moment. Eartha was not always allowed to show her talents to the world. The early 1960s for Eartha involved being nominated for several albums, also having several movies, a star on the Walk of Fame, Put a Flag on the Moon, became the whole caregiver of the Hidden Leaf Village, while also landing a trademark role as Catwoman on The Batman. You get the point. She was trailblazing and reaching incredible feats during this time. Now remember, Eartha's come up was between the 1950s and 1960s. This was parallel to the civil rights movement in America, and the American media increased its coverage of the various sit-ins, marches, and boycotts by African Americans across the country. Sarah Jackson, in her book Black Celebrity, Racial Politics and the Press, highlights that many historians agree with the notion that the coverage of the violence towards African Americans from white Americans in the South played a big role gaining sympathy from white Americans in the North. However, the sympathetic frames of the civil rights movement oversimplified and sanitized the civil rights movement and framed it as a South-specific struggle between the good blacks and the openly racist whites. However, by the 1960s, there was a national backlash towards the civil rights movement, with media in the North classifying it as dangerous and unnecessary. In fact, polls found that most white Americans believe that black people were moving too quickly in their pursuit for racial equality. Now, how does this relate to Eartha? Well, Eartha was invited to a luncheon at the White House. Side note, a luncheon is a formal word for lunch, so say it with me. Luncheon. Luncheon. So it's January 18th, 1960, and Eartha spoke her mind about the youth of America and why they rebel. This is coming from someone who has experienced what it's like to have nothing and living in similar conditions as the youth that were being spoken about at the Johnson luncheon. So long story short, according to Eartha herself, President Johnson had called the media outlets saying that he didn't want to see Eartha's face anymore and got the FBI and the CIA involved to go to the venue she performed at and find information about her.
The media, in general, all the medias, and said, I don't want to see that woman's face anywhere.
And this resulted in contracts being violated or quote-unquote lost because the venues didn't want the CIA and FBI visiting them. So she had to find work across the world and was essentially blacklisted in America.
Honey, that was a whitelisting. That wasn't a blacklisting.
That's true. It was a whitelisting.
That's right.
She finally came back to Broadway in 1978 and earned a Tony nomination. Now, I want to stress the nomination. Other than having her star in the Hall of Fame, Eartha had never won an award for her works until The Emperor's New Groove. Nominated, sure, but it's hard to believe that throughout all this time, all this work that she's done throughout her whole life, that she finally won an award in 2001, which was an Annie Award for Outstanding Individual Achievement for voice acting by a female performer in an animated feature production. Like, she was already a legend before her first award, but her performance in that movie is everything you want and more. Everything is there, but you can't deny the style and heart and flair of that performance. That is what Eartha Kitt has always had and continued to always be herself, no matter what the circumstances were. So yeah, this is my little segment for the one and only Eartha Kitt. Timeless. So a very quick wrap up. So this movie is a regular film reference amongst my family and friends because of how funny and memorable it is. And the cast and the team did what was thought to be impossible by working for years and through the fatigue and disappointment of test audiences and the setbacks and the changes to make probably Disney's funniest movie. In terms of it being one of the funniest movies, it's up there with like classics like Shrek, and B-Movie is also one of the funniest movies. I don't understand why people don't like that movie, but yeah, Emperor's New Groove is up there with those. And the movie didn't feel like it had a target audience. It just felt like something you can enjoy with your family and just have fun watching. It brought a new groove to the Disney formula. A simple movie, but incredibly effective in creating a good feeling where you could close your eyes and just listen to the music and the jokes, performances and score. That's part of the humor of the film. This movie to me is that beat break in a track. You know, like when James Brown says hit me, then nothing else is playing other than those drums. It's that. It's when it got to 2000 and Emperor's New Groove just needed a pause in the Disney formula and then brought this refreshing, I know I'm going to say it again, refreshing feeling to the Disney formula. And the Emperor's New Groove is the new groove that was needed for the Disney formula. Hey guys, just a quick update. I hit 50 something subscribers, I think. Yeah, and 1K on the Crowderville video. So thank you for the support. I also started Reddit. So yeah, I need people to teach me how to use that. If you like the content, then more shall come eventually. And yeah, that's how I'm going to end the video. Subscribe if you love it. Subscribe.